And good evening, everyone. If you can believe it, it is the third and final day of the MJHL Roundtable. It is session 5 of 6 in total. I'm Leah Hextall, your host tonight, and we are so thrilled because we have editorial, content, social media extraordinaire Dan Maraza joining us. He's coming to us from Boston. And for those of you who may not know who Dan is, let me tell you, most recently of DraftKings, Dan has been a part of Sports Illustrated, NHL.com, and he was one of the very original employees of the 31st franchise in the National Hockey League, the Vegas Golden Knights. Dan, thank you so much for joining us on the MJHL Roundtable.
Absolutely, Leah. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. And we just want to take care of a little bit of business here. As everybody knows, the MJHL Roundtable, we are looking for people to donate. This is a free registration, but we'd like you to donate because this is in COVID relief for the MJHL. It's 11 teams for all the canceled events, and unfortunately that being the playoffs where teams lost money, and we're looking to get a little bit of that back. So hopefully you'll hear something you like here and feel the need to do so. And if you donate and register, you get your name put in a draw for a Kyle Connor Heritage Classic Winnipeg Jets jersey. So there's also that. So it's a win-win situation. So Dan, I'm going to get to this here. When I say that you were an original employee of the Vegas Golden Knights, I'm not kidding around here. When you walked through the door, how many people were working there?
Oh, I think it was about 6 of us. To kind of set the scene a little bit, we had an office that was, I think, 12 by 12, and it was in an industrial park next to an IKEA in the suburbs. You can't make it up. Like humble roots is for Vegas hockey, and I think I got in there on Sunday night, June 19th, which is this week is obviously the anniversary, and they got the team from the NHL. The NHL gave them the franchise on June 22nd for Wednesday, so it was really right into the fire. But I think at the time I was the only person that was not ticket sales. So incredibly small staff, incredibly at the beginning, and at that point was no general manager, no players, no logo, and about 15 months until the Blues game.
Did they have their name already down?
We did not. That was actually one of the things that, even from a social media aspect, that I think was interesting over the Blues couple months is I think I could count in the thousands upon thousands of social media mentions I saw suggesting what different team names were. And some of them were good. Some of them made you laugh a little bit. One of them was that we saw a bunch of times was the Las Vegas house, because the house always wins. We saw that.
Yeah.
Then there was another one. I thought this one was kind of original. It was a guy who was not a football fan, and he was concerned that maybe the Raiders would move there. And he said, you should name the hockey team the Las Vegas Raiders, because then they won't be able to move there. So his name will be taken. So no, lots of different stuff like that. But no, there was no name at the beginning at all.
Yeah, and he kind of came up empty because he didn't get his wish either way right there. When you look at it, and you just mentioned the fact, no team, no general manager, no name yet. You walk through the door, and this is really starting from the very bottom. And the one thing for all of us, when Vegas Golden Knights came out on social media and they were starting to build their name and build their brand, as we say, the first thing I noticed about the Twitter account is that it was so different, Dan, than anything that the NHL world, and quite frankly, the sport world, had really seen. First of all, it was so entertaining, but the editorial content, it had some edge to it. It was funny. It wasn't afraid to poke fun at things, and it was using so many different elements with GIFs and whatnot before they were even really out there. And sir, that came from your brain, and I'm just wondering, how did you go about building this with really nothing to go on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I would be the first one to say is that while I definitely got a lot of the credit, it was definitely a massive team effort. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that are part of that. And I would say going in is, I don't think I necessarily walked in the first day and said, this is going to be what the voice is going to be, because for that matter, it's not really, in my opinion, on one person, especially if that one person is me, to decide what the actual brand is going to be. If anything, it's more to work with ownership, hockey ops, other executives to define what that voice was. In our case, one of the things that was interesting is because the staff was so small, the people that needed to make the decisions, most of them had not even been hired yet. So although in the grand scheme of things, like 6 months, 7 months, when that voice started to really kind of get going, is pretty quick in the big picture, is that at the beginning, if you go way back when, the accounts, since they had no team name, they were called Vegas is Hockey, and it always had a black logo with white lettering on it. And at the beginning, we didn't really have much tone, much voice, anything, especially over that initial summer. It was a lot of announcing different hires, mostly in hockey ops. It seems like we had a couple of those, few of those a week, probably had 30 in a stretch of about 6 weeks. So, but beyond that, we didn't really have a lot of content. I mean, for one, we didn't have the people in there yet that could kind of make those decisions. And the second part is admittedly so, I think I was spread a little thin just based on, yeah, I was involved in the social, but I was also the website, and I was also the back end of the website. And at the time, we didn't even have a website that was out of the mold of other teams in the league. It took a couple months to get going. So based on that, we were kind of treading water. And I think the thing that kind of launched us to kind of start to really get that direction was, I think it was in September, we hired the CMO, head of marketing. His name is Nami Abuzaid, and he came from the Win in Vegas. And great guy. He's probably watching this tonight. And great guy. And he had that a little bit of a different perspective on things, just coming from the Win, being involved in the world. And he was a huge, maybe even more so than myself, in helping define what the approach we were going to take was. And especially in his case, a lot of it was working a little bit more directly, even with ownership and with hockey ops, than someone such as myself was, although I was included as well. And one of the things that Nami had helped define was that a lot of people, when they saw a team coming to Las Vegas, they were like, well, this is different. And what he quickly defined was, we don't want to be afraid of that. We want to embrace that. I think one of the words that we use sometimes, we want to Vegas things and have fun that way. And I think the way we looked at it at the time was, we didn't know it was going to be good on the ice. I mean, who could have ever pictured that team almost wins the Stanley Cup in its close season? And we didn't know at the time how much background the fans that we had even had with hockey, that we looked at it, at the very least, we could be entertaining and we could show people a good time, and that we could relate to them on those avenues. And I would say where I got involved in that quite a bit more was once we got that directive of Vegasizing things, is that it was kind of on me to start working to figure out what Vegasizing even means. And I think that was kind of how we kind of developed it that way, with all that feedback and all that approval and all those processes that maybe people didn't see on the computer screens in the first few months. But that was how we kind of approached it. Well, it was one step at a time, and in the grand scheme of things, it did move pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, the way that you say it, we Vegasize it. Yeah, for me, it was different, but that makes sense, exactly what you were talking about. But I mean, I look at that and I think, you're starting from scratch, people are coming in, you're finally getting some direction, you get eventually a team and coaches and a logo and a name and all those things that you need in order to basically build something. But before that even happens, what did you really need in Vegas? Who did you really need to buy in order to accomplish everything that you just spoke of?
Sure. I think a lot of it, like I said, started with Nami, and then through him going through hockey ops to Jules McVie and Kelly McCrimmon, going to ownership to Bill Foley, who's definitely, he's not involved every day, but he's aware of what's going on, and to get that sign off as well. And then the vice president of ticket sales was actually employee number one of the franchise. So he had some real say as well as being the person. He had actually been before me, so he really was there from the very beginning. So it was all of those. And then about 6 months in, we hired a head of public relations, and then he got involved in that also. So a lot of it was heads of marketing, heads of public relations, heads of ticket sales, partnerships had a say, and then obviously hockey ops and ownership. So pretty much every aspect of the organization had at least some say in what the brand itself was going to be.
Yeah, and that being said, though, when you do try to do anything that's different, and especially with something new, and people are wondering, what is this going to be? How do you get those people that you just mentioned to actually buy into your concept and what you want to achieve?
Totally. I mean, that's an excellent question. I think it's the $1 million question that anybody who lives in social has probably wrestled with most of their careers. I think for me, and I think this is something that we started to do a little bit there, quite a bit there actually, and I think it's maybe something that even more so I see the value in now, is that one of the most common, I would say, maybe complaints, I don't know if complaint is the right word, that a lot of people in social have, is that, oh, the executives don't understand social. But the thing is the way I look at it is, it's kind of on social and on communications and marketing to teach those executives what the values be and what the value of it can be. And for me, I think first and foremost, it starts with economic and money value, where retweets are great, likes are great, comments are great. But at the end of the day, is when you're able to go to a team president or an owner and put down on paper, this is how much money we drove, maybe to put the partnerships or anything else, is that if we drove this amount of money this week and we're pacing to drive this amount of money for the year, and it's a pretty substantial amount, is you'll find that maybe some minds that maybe didn't necessarily know a lot about social and maybe didn't necessarily have the highest opinion of what social could do for a, all of a sudden, once they see the dollars start coming in, minds start becoming really open. And I think what that starts to do too is to just build that trust level also, is to show that one, there is value here. And then as you build out with the other things it would be like, how do you collaborate with them? No, you're not having your general manager sit in all your content meetings when, he has more important things to do. But it's putting it in paper, whether it's putting together a plan and saying, this is the process. These are the types of things we're going to do. These are the types of things we're not going to do. What do you think we stand for? What do you think we should not stand for? And by putting in writing and getting those approvals and setting up a process where you can get feedback as you go and go slowly, because it's always easier to add more than pull back. And by doing that, there really is a way to get buy-in. I think when they start feeling comfortable with not feeling like they're going to be surprised by what comes out, and knowing that there was some real financial value to this.
It's interesting. You just said two words there that really pop out to me. And one is going slowly, and the other is the surprise factor. Because as we know, social media right now, it's hard to know what's the right thing to do. And I'm wondering for yourself, you launched the Vegas brand back in 2016, but now it's 2020. What's the difference now than then? Because social moves so fast.
Totally. And you know me and my puns, I'm going to have to say it's night and day. I would say it's night and day here from 2016 to 2020. Is that I think one of the things that's incredibly different is just the overall nature of the internet has changed a little bit. And I don't know if nasty is the word, but there's a lot of negative energy on social, and a lot of that is just reflective of everything that's going on in the world right now. And I think as a result of that is just the what the Golden Knights did and what Wendy's has done, and even the LA Kings even before us. I think we're starting to become a little bit less of a space for that on the internet, at least for like corporate accounts, just because the stakes are so high on this, and people generally are on edge so much, and just being a little bit more just that way, just being aware of what's going on. I think that's one of the biggest changes. And I think another one of the biggest changes is just platforms are changing. I mean, is what Twitter was years ago is different now. I mean, Instagram is definitely, I think you saw Twitter in a lot of ways as being the one where most eyeballs are. Now you got TikTok getting involved too, which I'll admit I'm still kind of picking up some of the lingo and some of the processes with that. But TikTok has a lot of eyeballs in it. So it's just new platforms continuing to evolve.
I can tell you, I work with some younger people who are all into TikTok right now, and I refuse it. I'm never getting on it. I won't even look at it because I know I'll get probably addicted to it, because I always said I would never go on certain other social media platforms, and now I'm on them. So there you go. But like,
come on, really, have some fun with it.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm not a content creator like you. I mean, but the fact is that this content and creating it can do so much for organizations. But Dan, I still feel like I see a little bit, and not so much in professional sports, but say in other levels, like for instance, junior hockey, where organizations still feel like it's enough just to have an account. So we're there. We have a Twitter account. We have a Facebook page. We're on Instagram. But is that enough just to be there?
Honestly, I think in the cases of some teams, I think the answer is yes. I think that could go for the AHL, the ECHL, and even the NHL for that matter, is that there definitely are some teams that don't necessarily invest very heavily, that they generally use the platforms as a hub. Use the press release, use the final score, use the stats from the game, and hopefully, and I guess this is what keeps me hopeful, is that you started to see places change a little bit more based on that. Like I said, and I think that's the core of it. And it's going to be a really interesting time with COVID also. Just budgets are going to be cut. I mean, staffs are going to be more lean than they used to be. And not to kind of beat a dead horse, but going back to that financial aspect of it is that, especially now with hockey related revenues not really being there for like at all for teams is I think is a really huge opportunity just to start small and show what financial revenue you could drive, and looking at it as, okay, we don't need to be the Vegas Golden Knights, we don't need to be the LA Kings, because maybe we're not like that. Maybe we're in Winnipeg, maybe we're in Buffalo, and it's not one size fits all. And I think just, to me, I think the ways that are really grow within teams is, and companies for that matter, is proving that financial wherewithal of it, and kind of also appealing in a way that doesn't necessarily scale executives away. I know for sure that there would be some old hockey guys that would hear the suggestion, do things like the Vegas Golden Knights, and they would probably kind of pull back the same way if it was a player that somebody suggested, hey, one of our players could be like the next Nasty on Twitter. I could picture a hockey ops guy just shuddering at the thought of that, but just kind of establishing that what constitutes good winning the internet, it's about reflecting the values of yourself as an individual, of your organization, and really going slow that way and appealing on a more sensible type of way that way.
And you just mentioned, Dan, individual, and I'm just thinking about the fact I want to turn this a bit more from organization to players, because I think that for a player, there's a great opportunity to promote yourself, to promote the organization that you play for, but you also need to do it responsibly and in a safe space. And that can be a really tricky place to be for a player. So what are your suggestions to players on their social media?
It's a really good question. I would say this is probably a question that keeps a lot of coaches or managers or even owners maybe up at night, is that this is the world that we live in now, especially as younger players start to come up through the ranks, is that they're going to be active on social. To me personally, and the way I look at it is, it's about going into it with a plan and not looking at it as 15 and I'm in high school and I have a Facebook account and I'm just going to post whatever comes to my mind on there. It's about kind of establishing guidelines. And one of the things that I do, and I think this works for a brand, but I think it works particularly well for an individual, is establishing content buckets. And what I mean by content buckets, it's categories where this category, that category, that category, and then the final category. If what I want to post does not fit one of those categories, I'm not going to post it. And establishing early what those buckets are going to be. So, for example, in my case, I'm someone who works in social media and communications in professional sports. On Twitter, I have about 6,000 followers. And one of the things, and so the blue buckets that I've myself is I want to show people, one, that I'm a decent guy, that I know my job, that I know the sport, and maybe something that makes me stick out a little bit from someone else. So for me, I share only positive examples of work that other people in the industry have done. I think the last tweet I sent out before this session was the Chicago Blackhawks put out this really cool creative with Melody Hossa getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And by keeping it positive as opposed to negative, is negativity doesn't shine well online. Be critical that way, but overwhelming positive does, in my opinion. So I try to do that and highlight the good work about it. For me, I would say another thing is I definitely am a stats geek. I'm definitely a hockey geek, a sports geek, probably other kinds of geek too. But for me, I grew up reading books about the Stanley Cup in the 1890s when I was watching MTV. And so for me, since I know a lot of these weird little anecdotes, a lot of times I'll share those because it's just related to the sport. And then for me, it's not all business. I want to show some of my personality too. So one of my hobbies is I like to go to a lot of historical locations, like I said, those nerdy categories again, and go to places even that were movies were filmed. So like the last weekend, I was at a spot where Forrest Gump was filmed and, shared that on my social. And then in my case, I like dad jokes, because who doesn't? And keep it light and easy. So by keeping those for the most part, 99% of my posts probably fall in those, is that what it does is it keeps me from necessarily getting maybe sucked into a conversation that I don't want to be sucked into, when that can be really easy in these days of emotional issues and people having lots of opinions. But by knowing and pre-establishing there is something that might seem like a good idea, it's very obvious that it's not when I have that guideline to stick to. And I think players could do that too. And I think players could do that. Well, it's not going to be dad jokes and movie locations. it's the gym routine. Maybe it's the tricks they're teaching their dog or something like that. Maybe it's highlighting good plays of teammates or things like that. Is I think by establishing those buckets of those content buckets, I think you could give a player, especially a young player at the junior level, a good script to stick to that kind of gives them a plan and lines to kind of cover between. And especially then too, I think those buckets could also be shared with high hockey executives with the team, is that saying, hey, Joe Smith is going to get involved in social. This is kind of the direction that we're going to be coaching him in. What do you think? And same thing as I was kind of mentioning before is the coaches feel like there's not going to be surprises and that the players are getting good direction and safe direction. Is I think the buy-in is there a lot more. So for me, just establishing lines to cover between, and I think it could be that, to really players of the team to do that also, and in the process, not only do provide a great service for the team and for the players, but also for the social staff itself to show a different amount of importance to the team. That it's not just about the content you're posting out from your team accounts, but it's also you are providing infinite value in other areas for your team too, just based on the way you're keeping a lot of your players out of trouble.
The other thing too is that I don't know, I know that nowadays it seems that social media is something that more and more organizations are doing for their players at various levels. But do you think that players really get that, it doesn't matter if in your bio you say, tweets do not represent my employer. I always tell people at the end of the day, you are representing that organization, whether you like it or not, and vice versa for them. So what you say can be held against you. I look at that and I just get nervous for some of these young athletes, because one misstep on social, as we know, it can take a second to take people down.
Totally. And I think that's one of the things that's, I think, important when it comes to that coaching is that it's not about fear-mongering, scaring someone who's saying, if you log into Twitter, your career is going to be over. It's about doing it in a way, but at the same time, not hiding from that and sharing examples of things that have happened and things that have been done. And especially for players that have talent and can have a future in this, when they see those things, I don't know, if it was me, it would scare the wits out of me. I would be extra, I'm pretty cautious as it is, but I would be extra cautious to not be that way. But like I said, it's kind of like, as I was touching on before, but at the same time, it might make me afraid to post, because I would look at it as, well, anything I say can be spun a different way, and nothing good can come from this. So I'm just going to stay off of it. And so that's like what I said is like going back to those content buckets, and really, I think making them very basic. Like I said, it's going to be pretty hard to get too upset if you show pictures playing with your dog, or if it's you, cooking. Like I have a friend that I grew up with who his Instagram, he's become this gourmet cook, and he constantly is showing off things that way. It's by keeping things that way that it's very difficult to stay out of. It's very difficult to step out of bounds with, and at the same time acknowledging that, like I said, there can be consequences if you kind of get off the plan, so to speak.
Yes, and you just a while ago you mentioned, we're here unprecedented time in a pandemic. We're seeing the fact that hockey is likely going to be returning soon, baseball, other sports, and we know at the professional level they're going to be doing it without fans. So to me, the first thing I think of is this is where social media is going to come so much into play, because besides the broadcast on the television, the only way to connect the players, the teams with their fans is going to be through these channels. What do you think it's going to look like, and what do you expect from social in this time, Dan?
It's a good question. I think one of the things, and I've noticed this at DraftKings over here in Boston, and I've noticed this with a lot of colleagues that I've spoken to, is that engagement right now, relatively speaking, how many posts are being put out, is way higher than usual. I think a lot of it is people are home and they're just craving things to do and things to get their attention. So I think first off, I think the amount of eyeballs on things is going to be high. I think that's one. I think the second aspect of it, which I'm still interested to see, I mean, I check the internet the same way as you do. I'm still not really sure how it's going to work with outside media attending a lot of these games also, where in the past you might have 5 beat writers that might go around the coach after the game, but are they allowed in the bubble? I don't know. I don't know that. However, team personnel is going to be in that bubble. So I think from that aspect, I think a lot of teams have the chance to maybe control, I don't know if control is the right word, but maybe to take hold a little bit more of the narrative otherwise would, just because the amount of people be there is so limited. I think honestly, those are some of the things I look for. And that doesn't even include that if fans and stands, you can normally some places that you might not be able to go because those fans, you could go there and you could film and you can do different things like that. And I think that one of the things that I try to be optimistic about is, yeah, it's a really difficult time and it's not the circumstances that anybody wanted to be healed under, but at the same time is usually when there's something like this that's disrupts the status quo, there's a really good chance for innovation out of that. And there's a good chance for things that maybe after the pandemic is over that they become part of the regular routine there. But I think it's just more that for the that are lucky enough to be inside the bubble, I think the amount of eyeballs they have a chance to get with good content, I think is going to be higher than ever before.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be absolutely huge. And that's obviously at the highest level of the game, the highest level of sports. So I want to bring it back to more of the grassroots level. And if we're sitting here on the MJHL Roundtable, and for the 11 teams within this league and other teams within junior hockey, they don't have the resources to push so much into their social media. But Dan, if you were going to help them with any kind of strategy, what would you suggest that they do in order to help their social media presence grow?
That's a good question. I think for me, I think a lot of it, and this is, I think, could be something that is kind of true in all walks of life, is don't try to do too much and stay within yourself. I think that's something that sometimes social departments, and I've probably been guilty of it in the past too, is you sometimes spread yourself too thin because you're running in so many different directions, trying to do so many different things. And sometimes what can happen with it is the quality of your content can go down because instead of spending 20 minutes on one post or one piece of content, you're doing 5 and 20 minutes that you're spending 4 minutes on. And content that you spent 20 minutes on is going to probably be better than content that you spent 4 minutes on. So for me, what I would be looking at is to really get down to the nuts and bolts of what your highest priorities are. And but the way I would look at it is if I was a junior team, I would do a content audit and say, okay, these are the organization's key values. These are the tools that perform the best, which we could easily just with Twitter analytics for free, just go into nativetwitter.com and you could do that. And I would try to get to the core of what's really either making money for us or delivering eyeballs for us. And if something is not high on that list, I would venture to say, don't not do them at all, but maybe to lean out a little bit. And knowing that maybe your staff might be small, maybe your amount of resources might be small, is the way I look at it is nobody out there is waiting to see you good content that was getting their attention. And the example I always use in that is when the players were being started in 2015, I think it was, or 14, is that they would have way fewer articles than almost any other website. I found myself reading more of their articles than any other website. And one of the reasons is that even if a topic did not look like it was going to be something I wanted to read about, their brand was so established that all of their content was good that I was so confident that if I started reading something, it would hook me. So by doing less, they actually got more. And I think that's something, like I said, I think pro teams could do it too, but I think especially for junior teams, when the resources are going to be so limited, is focus on doing a couple things well as opposed to a lot of things maybe mediocre.
Yeah, we go back to the whole content is king. If you got good content, people are going to come. If it's not being pushed out, 10 tweets a day or anything like that.
Totally. And even just follow up off of that is one of the things I've noticed in my career as somebody who I've been in more than my share of Microsoft Excel sheets over the years looking at these numbers, is that if you, over the course of a week, your top 2 or 3 posts, at least this was the case nights, is all the top 2 or 3 posts a week definitely got more eyeballs than the other 50 combined. And I thought that was incredibly interesting. And I think that's kind of like what that good content and that content is king aspect kind of gets back to, is knowing that posting 10 times doesn't mean 10 times as many eyeballs, and really kind of sticking to your guns that way and using your numbers to back it up. And I think that's the thing too, is even not to give them a long answer there, is have numbers that back up what you do. It's not enough just to say, I think this is going to work because my gut says it's going to work. It's about having basic numbers. Well, it doesn't mean you have a spreadsheet of 1,000 numbers, but you have the right numbers, whether it's 2 or 3 key goals that you kind of stick to and really kind of go with them and just make it numbers based, simple and straightforward, and do the best you can with that.
Dan, do you have, besides yourself as an oracle, do you have any places where people, you could guide them to go, where you think are good places to learn about social media, analytics, brand, all those things, learning your voice, etc.?
I mean, that's a really good question. I think one of the things that is great about the internet, where we touched on maybe some of the negatives of the internet before, but I think this is one of the best, is that the ability to connect people and introduce people to new ideas that they maybe otherwise not be exposed to ever, I think is unprecedented. And I think one of the things about the social community, especially in sports, right, is most people know each other. They engage in conversations about content, and one of the hashtags they use a lot is SM Sports, social media sports. And just following that SM Sports hashtag, you'll start seeing the conversations, and then you'll start seeing, well, okay, I follow, and maybe you follow me because you watched me on the webinar, and then you'll see that I engage with this person, that person, and the other person about issues on a regular basis, and then maybe you start following them too, and it kind of becomes a snowball that kind of gets bigger and bigger as it goes. I think for me, I think that's the best place to go, because it's I guess there's loads of different kinds of ideas. It's feedback in real time. Is getting to know the social space. You gotta be on it. You gotta be on it. You gotta become a savant of social, and just kind of really kind of getting to know things that way, just by diving in.
Okay, so Dan, we're running on time here, but I have to ask you, do you have a favorite social media post that you've ever done that you look back and go, you know what, that one hit it?
I actually do, and it took me like half a second to think of what it was. And is that, and there's a backstory to how it got set out. I always consider this one of the posts that kind of started to launch the Golden Knights of Voice and establish the voice. And what it was we hadn't played a game yet. It was April, and it was the last day of Joe Louis Arena when the Red Wings were playing the Devils. And I had been digging that entire week to say, like I was like calling the Elias Sports Bureau, and I was like, man, the Golden Knights might be the only team out there that doesn't have a losing record at Joe Louis Arena, as far as the visiting team goes. So I dug in, and believe it or not, there was actually one team that had a winning record there. It was the Florida Panthers. I would have never guessed it. I thought, okay, well, we're the only Western Conference team to not have a losing record at Joe Louis Arena. So this was thought out and researched, and we were going to put it out right when the game was starting. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting on my couch, single guy eating junk food, and put it out on my phone. And all of a sudden, 15 minutes later, my tweet was on the NHL Network on the screen in front of me. And I was like, holy smokes, what just happened here? And it was one of those things that all of a sudden then you look and it's like 1,000 retweets, 2,000 retweets. And it just kind of really resonated, just kind of humor-wise and just kind of the timely aspect of it. And then even for me, I remember that night I was brushing my teeth and ready to go to bed. And Steve Levy, has like SportsCenter was like that play of the day or something like that. And it was my tweet. So just the idea of like me sitting in my house in suburban Las Vegas and sending this out from my phone, and all of a sudden I think it ended up with like 2.5 million impressions, organic, and seeing it on TV in front of you and watching it really go that way, and also in the process kind of going a long way to start establishing the Golden Knights as kind of that whimsical type of voice. Is I always kind of fondly think of that one just because it was kind of super surreal to see it that way.
Yeah, it always amazes me what people like yourself can come up with, because I would never think to do that, and the creativity is unbelievable. And people often just tweet. To do social media well does take such talent, my friend, and you are one of the best at it. You changed the game, and there was a cult following when you were at the helm of it. And we thank you so much for your time here tonight, Dan. I'm going to give you one last moment. If there's anything that you think out there that you could say about maybe whether it's a misconception about social media or something that you feel people really need to know, what would that be?
Ooh, oh, that's putting me on the spot. I would say this is that, and maybe this is going to be me being an idealist, is that it's very easy to log on social these days and be overcome with negative emotions. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and I know a lot of people that I know that they have been spending less time on social just because it can be overwhelming. It can be really overwhelming at times. I would say the thing that I think people should know is as a whole, that I'm still a big believer there's way more positive out there than negative. I know in my case is I've landed more job connections I've made with people through social media, and then a year later they had an opening, than I've gotten jobs off of job boards, and just knowing that, and in my case too, is connected me with a lot of people in the industry that I consider not just contacts now, but also really good friends. Is I would say just to keep in mind that although the volume can be loud with a lot of negativity, and sometimes there really is a lot of good out there, and to kind of maintain hope that there still is a lot of good out there.
Absolutely. Dan Raza, you are one of the best in the business, friend. And I just look forward to your work. I have to let people know where can they find you on social so they can come see your content? Yeah,
so follow me, same spelling as my name, just at Dan Maraza. And I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter. One of the things is, especially if you guys want to follow my Instagram, I'd be very appreciative. My Twitter is has way more followers than my Instagram. I like to joke that people they want to see what I have to say, but they don't want to see what I look like. is what I like to say sometimes. But I'm really trying to get that Instagram following up, especially. So anybody who could go there, I follow back. So just at Dan Maraza, no underscores, numbers, just same spelling as my name.
Yeah, and when are we going to see you on TikTok?
Oh, same day you join.
All right, well, so we'll see.
We'll do it together. We'll do it together.
Well, you'll have to hold my hand and guide me through it. I just want to remind everybody, this was session number 5 of 6. We have one night at 8 o'clock Central. We're going to be joined by Winnipeg Jets head coach Paul Maurice and Toronto Maple Leafs head coach Sheldon Keefe. They both have roots in junior hockey and now obviously having great success at the professional game. It's going to be a great coaches conversation. Once again, you can donate mjhlhockey.ca. As I know, we just got schooled in social media by Dan, so if you appreciate it, we'd sure appreciate it if you donate there to help with COVID relief for the league. And it's 11 teams. Dan, thank you so much. I ask you to take good care of yourself in this unprecedented time. And I look forward to following you along on social media because I always learn things.
You as well.
All right. Thanks so much, Dan. And we'll see everyone in a little time.